about how you present it to the children. Now, if you're going to say something, there's a rule in psychology that a nonverbal message is much stronger than a verbal message. If you don't say something, it's sometimes stronger than saying something. And when you do actions during the Haggada shel Pesach, then it's even stronger. So the Haggada is all about props. If you've noticed, it's all about props. You have your maror, you have your charoset, you have your pillows, you have your you have your wine, you have a lot of actions, and those actions are crucial that they should help the night ingrain in the child a memory that he won't forget. Imagine just sitting by the kid, well, I want to tell you a story. We were once playing in Egypt, we were once living in Egypt, and then Hashem delivered us, and very nice. What is the kid going to get? We have to be pilu, and we act out. You know, some families, they do, the father goes out like, hey, where are you coming? From Egypt. You do that stuff. We do that also. I do as much as I do as much. The truth is that my father didn't notice how much he did, but I added it on. Why? Because I was in LA, so I had a lot of help from the different Hollywood producers over there. So I did a whole theatrics. And once my parents were by our house in Los Angeles for Lela Seder, and he says, "Oh, this is Hollywood we have." And the next year he was in Montreal. He says, "Oh, my son does a Hollywood Pesach Seder," and I don't mind because that's what the kids should get. The kids should get the most involvement as possible. And the way how to set up the family is like, let's say Mr. Elmali let's say he'll have his grandchildren. So the older children will sit more in back of the table, and the grandchildren will sit next to you. That's the way it has to be done. I know in some families. Are we videotaping? If you are now. The issue is that if a person is not going to invest in his children, they're going to be like in the backstage, he's lost the tremendous opportunity of giving the night of Emunah. Now, the purpose of Leil HaSeder is one purpose only, that a child should receive Emunah. A child should receive the belief how we came out from Egypt on that night. And how is he going to get that? It's a simple message. But the more that you act it out, and the more that you show them with things, the more that will ingrain them. So there's one message that I wanted to point out, and I saw a sefer. I have it outside. It's called Chazal Amud, and he brings this point out beautifully. He says like this: let's go through the night of the Seder. Why do we eat matzah? Why do we eat matzah? Go ahead. Why do we eat matzah?
Because we left the hipazon.
Because we left in a hurry. Okay? But that's not what's written in my Haggada. At the beginning of my Haggada, that's not what's written. At the beginning of my Haggada, it's written, Halach ma'anya diyachalu avatana barad mitzrayim. This is poor bread. And of course, this is where the master of the table always interjects, why poor bread? I pay $30 a kilo for it. You know, that's... or it makes me poor. Yeah, that's...
$30 a kilo is not cheap.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. That's the joke.
Yeah.
Jokes aside, though, it says it's the poor bread, not what you said. But, Meir Elbaz, as usual, is also right. Because if you look later on, it says that the matzah that we eat, ki behipazon yatzanu mimitzrayim. Matzah zu... שאנחנו אוכלים על שומה. Later on. על שום שלא הספיק בצקם של אבותינו להחמיץ עד שנגמר מלכים לקדוש ברוך הוא. So, what's the reason why we eat matzah? Because we didn't have time that the bread should rise, because we left in a hurry. So what is it? Decide. Is it the poor bread, and that's why we're eating it? Bread because we were slaves, and that's the bread that we eat while we were slaves? Or is it the matzah? Next, that's one contradiction that you have. Another contradiction: why do we have wine, red wine? Why do we have red wine? Why do we have red wine at the table? Why do we have wine?
Signify the blood.
Signify the blood. But there's an even more basic reason, because we want to show that we're free. That's the whole night. That's why we lean. So we're free. So you have wine. You also have this. We'll call it this paradox. On one end, you're having the wine to show about the sufferings that we went through.
But the simcha.
On the other hand, you have the simcha.
The simcha.
So it's that's another, we'll call it conflict. We have it Leil HaSeder. And you have conflict, you have it Leil HaSeder. So he says like this, the Zohar HaKadosh says like this. And I want to read you the language of the Zohar HaKadosh, because when you hear this language of the Zohar HaKadosh, you're going to see how important it is. Max, can I trouble you that you know where I sit in the front?
I'll go.
No, yeah, okay, you know where I sit in the front, there's a book, a brown book, it's like a leather cover. It's called Chazon LaMoed.
I've never find that one.
It's just okay, so it's because I want to read you the language inside.
Brown books. Taliban Jews.
My kids will not touch a regular.
No,
I
the
hate that
shmua is
shmura.
more delicious
No,
than
my
the
kids
other.
will eat it the whole
Yeah?
week.
It's the same thing, it's
It's
the same
delicious.
hours.
I love
We
it.
buy
Yeah,
gold
it's
kilo,
from
no.
Yeah.
Montreal. Now, if you buy Montreal, there's a couple types. There's Montreal Matzah Bakery, and then there's
That's all
New
they eat.
York bakeries. Montreal Matzah Bakery, they're still going to have the Canadian prices. The American bakery is going to be with because of the exchange rate.
That's right.
So I mentioned to David Biton, your nephew, I mentioned that at my birthday. He says 100 up to 120, 150 with the exchange rate. So, Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotzaticha me'eretz Mitzrayim. Okay, I am your God that took you out of Egypt. One of the 10 Commandments. B'pasuk zeh sha'al Rav Yossi HaKatan min hachaverim mirashbi. Listen to this piece of Zohar HaKadosh. He told him, I have a question that is pounding in my heart, and I'm afraid to ask from you, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. You know what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was? He was the first Moroccan. No, and all over the Moroccan houses they have his picture. We coined him as the first Moroccan.
Did you throw a chair at somebody?
Rabbi Chaim Pinto. He came after. Amar le Rashbi. Rabbi Shimon Yochai answered, Amor. Okay, give me your answer. He says, Zisha Kadosh Baruch Hu maskir et Yisrael bechol makom, Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotzatich me'eretz Yisrael. Ani Elokecha asher hotzatich me'eretz Yisrael. איזה יתרון מלמדנו זה? הלא תנאי שלם הוא. זו שנאמר אברהם, כי גר בזרח ארץ לא להם. Yes, I have a very simple question. He says, I'm asking honestly, and I want an honest answer. A lot of times people ask me questions here, I don't have the answer, because they ask me very strong questions. And you can always ask, and even though this sounds like total blasphemy, but he asked it. Why is it such a big deal that Hashem took us out of Egypt? He was just fulfilling his promise. He told Avram he was going to do it. So it says 50 times in the Torah. I am your God took you out of Egypt. I am 50 times. What's the big deal? You promised to Avram Avinu you were going to do it.
Every day the prayer we say that.
Yeah.
Every day.
Our whole mitzvot are based on them. What's the big deal? That's the question he asked Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Good question, no?
And what's the answer?
Amar lo. Rabbi Shimon Yochai said, Bo re'ibini. It's good I have the answer, because a lot of times I ask questions. My wife kills me when I do this. I had the Shabbat table, I say, I have a question. And I ask the question, I say, oh, where's the answer? I say, I don't know. I say, yeah, they want to kill me. But this one I have the answer. Amar lo, Boru ibni, bnini, my son. HaKadosh Baruch Hu lo hitnei Avram, ela sheyotzi et Yisrael migalot Mitzrayim. All he told Avram is that he's going to take us out of Egypt. ולא שיוצאים מתחת שיבוט אלוהים אחרים. But he didn't say what he was going to bring them to. Because once Israel, he says, listen my son, once Israel were in Egypt, they went down to the 49 levels of Tumah. And Hashem, all he had to do was take them out of the 49 levels of Tumah. But he never guaranteed that he's going to bring them to the 49 levels of Kiddusha, of holiness. That is the greatness of taking us out of Egypt. That's what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says. So the greatness was that he took us out of Egypt to the 49 levels of Tahara, and he says that's why the Torah is written 50 times. Yetziat Mitzrayim. Yetziat Mitzrayim is written 50 times in the Torah. Against the 49 levels, and the 50th, I guess, is connection with Hashem.
It's 98 levels.
So it was in effect 98 levels. That was the greatness. The 49 levels from down to point zero, that he promised to Avram Avinu. But from 0 to 49, that's why Hashem keeps on saying. That's what Rabbi Shimon. Let's try to understand. How did they get to this level? How did they get to this level?
Very
So there's a
simple.
sefer called the Shla. Yeah.
How did they get to that level? When they left Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
there was a door, there was generations that died,
Yeah.
and the new generations slowly got up to that level of Kedusha.
But how? How did they get to such a high level?
With a
No,
man.
no, they got to the 49th level of Kedusha at Mount Sinai, and the generation wasn't dead yet.
Yeah.
The man doesn't have ready food, have spiritual life. They make it holy, you know.
Okay. Okay, you're saying because they worked very hard. I want to show you something that I think that you could use this by the Haggada. Specifically, and this is a lesson in all of our lives. Specifically, because they went through challenges of sufferings, of who you are, of the Egyptians beating them, and them not changing their identity.
Emunah.
That's what got them to their high level. So we say, what's this matzah? It's the poor bread we ate in Egypt. Why do we have to talk about the poor bread? The answer is, it's because we suffered so much in Egypt and we stuck to our guns. That's what brought us to our high level. We remember the blood in the wine because that's what made us free. Because that's what made us free. So that's why our child's going to ask, Manishtana Laila Azeh. Really what he's asking is like this. Why is tonight, if you notice by the Manishtana, everything is conflicting, right? Let's see.
What's the difference between this night and the other night?
He's asking a contrast. Manishtana le'ezeh. In all other nights, we dip one time, tonight 2 times. I don't even think we ever answered the child this, by the way. In the Haggada, that's never answered, so you have to answer him on your own. In all other nights, and we'll see what the answer is. We eat chametzu matzah. Tonight we only eat matzah. On all other nights, we eat all other vegetables. Tonight only maror. All other nights, we do standing and leaning. Tonight only leaning. So in other words, we're asking, it's all a conflicting night. So what do we answer him? Yes. We were slaves in Egypt, and we eat all this stuff, and even the things that we do eat is also conflicting. We have matzah that has 2 reasons. But you know what? It's that conflict that brought us high. It's that conflict that got us to a level, an unprecedented level. In our lives, this is a big lesson in our lives, that we sometimes, a person who has it easy his whole life, he doesn't know the challenge in order to rise above the level. A person from the beginning, he had to work hard for his accomplishments. He doesn't take it for granted. He keeps on growing and growing and growing and growing. And you know what? Let me tell you, there's a secret going on in Israel. You know, about the yeshiva bachurim. There's yeshiva bachurim that come from all over the country. They go into the different yeshivot in Israel. Yeah. You'd think the best yeshiva bachurim, where are they from? You think, where are they best from? Jerusalem and Bnei Brak. It's not true. It's not true. The rabbis of the yeshiva will tell you the best kids are coming from the different lost areas because they don't take it for granted. They work and they work and they work and they don't give up. I remember when I first came to yeshiva. I grew up in Montreal, but I didn't go to the yeshiva there. I went later on to yeshiva, and I ended up in yeshiva with boys that it would. Can you not film this part? Work on
Where is he from? Siberia?
Where?
No, you never saw weather like this?
Whenever you train yourself to a certain challenges, and you're able to overcome them, then the sky's the limit. That's what happened to the Jews. You know what? They had 3 reasons why they were saved. שלא שינו את לשונם, שלא שינו את שמם, ושלא שינו את מלבושיהם. In Egypt, we didn't change our names. We didn't call ourselves Mark. We call
Muhammad.
ourselves Mordechai. That's my English name. We didn't change our language. That's why, by the way, the Jews, notice they always have a different dialect. Whether it's Judeo-Arabic, or whether it's Yiddish, or whether it's Ladino, right? Or even Judeo-Spanish, I think, is a little different.
Mm-hmm.
It was always in order to keep our language a little bit different. Because once you lose your identity, you lose the fact that maybe you have a special heritage. You quickly forget it and you blend in. And then we didn't change our clothing. We didn't change our clothing. We always say that kept us separate in Egypt, and b'schut zeh we were redeemed. So we were very close to the end, but at the end when we rose up high. So that I think is a theme in the whole Haggada. That is a theme in the whole Haggada. Now, let's continue. Let's continue on the night. Halach ma'anya. It's written like this. Halach ma'anya. Well, first we start Bibhilu yatzanu mimitzrayim. Now, where do we get Bibhilu yatzanu mimitzrayim? People think it's a Moroccan thing, but if you open up the Rambam, the Rambam has a Haggada, the Rambam, and over there he writes, Bibhilu yatzanu mimitzrayim. It's the translation in Aramaic for in a hurry we left Egypt. So it's just extra words that we add onto the Haggada. It's the Haggada of the Rambam. Bibhilu yatzanu mimitzrayim. That's all it is. And we have a minhag during the singing that we go around the table. Why do we go around the table with the
Tray.
with the tray? So there's two reasons. This is brought down in a sefer that I saw called Magen Avot, and he writes the following. Number one, it's written that I have it over here actually. The new edition.
Is not a North African tradition?
This is a North African book, believe it or not. I know the author. We're good friends and enemies.
What? Speak up.
C'est lui l'auteur. C'est lui l'auteur. C'est lui l'auteur. L'auteur, c'est lui.
Oh, bon.
So, because the problem is like this: I have my Yetzer Hara and my Yetzer Atov. I always battled them.
Good.
You know the rabbi that saw a guy learning alone. He says, "Why are you learning alone?" He says, "I'm not learning alone. I'm learning with my Yetzer Hara. I'm learning with my evil inclination." He says, "Why not your Yetzer Atov? Why not?" He says, "Listen, my Yetzer Hara, number one, he's always there, and number two, he's much sharper. That's why I like learning with
But I have a
him."
question for
Yes.
you. Why
It's a
we
good one.
do Bibelo
Oh.
and the Ashkenazim don't do it?
That I can't answer you. I can answer you why we do it. Why don't you don't do it? I have no
They're
idea.
not Moroccans.
I didn't say Moroccan, I said North African. Because
Same thing.
Tunisiens et Algériens, ils le font.
So listen to what I read over here. That the Nusach Bibhilu Yatzanu Mimitzrayim I actually found in a very early edition of Rabbi Yitzchak El Ahdab. He's a student of the son of the Rosh. We're talking about the 1400s. And he writes this minhag already. He writes like this. Minhag Sfarad le'agvia kera biyado ve'omer halachmanya ve'noagu le'akif hakera saviv rosh haktanim. And the minhag was to take it. Why?
המצה בלבד.
He says in order to so that the kids should ask questions. Right? By the way, by halach ma'anya, what you're supposed to do, it says in the halacha, is take it away. So part of taking it away is also you go like this. So the kid says, "Hey, what's going on?" Oh, you got the kids to ask a question. If you notice, that's what the whole Pesach Seder is about, getting the kid to ask questions. So you do bibino in order to ask questions. That's one reason. There was another reason written by the Sefer Noeg B'Chochma. Noeg B'Chochma was Rabbi Yosef Ben Naim. He lived in Fez up until the 60s and 70s. I don't know if you ever heard of him. Rabbi Yosef Ben Naim. He had the largest library in Morocco. He had the largest library in Morocco. He donated it all to YU. He was a very wonderful Talmid Chacham that had many Sfarim. And he wrote a Sefer on Minhagim called Noheg Bechochma. And over there he writes the reason why you put it around people's head is Zecher La'ananei Kavod, to remember the different the clouds that were on top of us.
Yeah.
So that's the Zecher La'ananei Kavod. We do it in order to ask questions. There's other reasons also to show that we left quickly, so we're going away with it a little bit. There's others. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch of Rabbi Baruch Toledano. We have the sefer right over here. That brown one that says that the reason why you do it is that there are 10 mitzvot that are that symbolize the 10 spheres, the 10 sfirot. So it's a little bit more Kabbalistic to say that the 10 sfirot protect us, so too this Kiara is going to protect us. So whether it's because to remind us of the Ananim, or whether it's in order to make the children ask questions, or whether it's a protection for us, all of this, and some say also the 10 sfirot, so that brachot should come on, and that's why we also do it. We give brachot to people going on, and whatever.
I think the non-religious Moroccans like to do it so they can take pictures.
Now, the
see it on Facebook.
Whatever. Whatever. All right, Max. Whatever reasons that we do that's the way to start the Haggada. And one of the reasons why we start the Haggada this way is right away the children can ask questions. That's so important because it's one of the props. Fine. Then we start Halach Ma'anya. Yes.
When we do the Hebrew,
Yeah.
okay, we say Yom Ze Ne 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 Yom Ze Ne Ne.
That's enough of that voice.
Sochen Shamayim Ene Gevelo Yatzanu B'Mitzrayim.
See, I don't have that. That's nice. That's a nice minhag. See, that's what's beautiful about Pesach also. Every family has their minhag. Some families, their minhag is to eat and to do the Haggada quickly.
So they can watch a hockey game.
Yeah, so everyone has their minhag. So it says, Halach ma'anya diachelu avatan barad mitzrayim. Whoever is hungry, come and eat. The Ben Ish Chai brings a story. The story he brings is very funny. It says like this. He says there was a rich person in the city that was extremely stingy. Never gave any money.
Yeah, but
And any poor person that would want to eat by his table, I'm sorry. I have no room for guests on my table.
But usually people are hungry. Why? Because during the daytime
They don't eat.
They don't eat.
Right. Oh, okay, fine. I might mention that a little bit later. So this rich person over here, he had the Parnas, who had a bunch of poor people that didn't have where to eat. And he was the only one in the city that had enough to have a lot of people over, but he would always keep it for himself and in the fridge or whatever else. He wouldn't share it. So they come to him, the Parnas with the Vad, and they say, yeah, mister, we want to speak to you. If it's for money, nothing to talk about. You know my nature, I ain't giving a red cent. He said, no, it's not about money. No, okay. Nisan is a time where we were saved, so we have to do mitzvot. I told you if it's about money, there's nothing to talk about. No. We are making a certain campaign in order to bring the Mashiach. It says that if you are a truthful person, you speak the truth, the Mashiach will come. So we want you to accept upon yourself this whole month of Nisan to speak only the truth. Oh. Okay, that I can do. He speaks the truth. And Nisan comes. Pesach comes. He thinks these guys are crazy. Fine, but whatever. Sits down at the table. Halach ma'anya. Kol dichfin yativ yachal. Whoever's hungry, come and eat.
The door open.
Look at the door. The Parnas is there with the whole line behind him. He says, He says, what are you doing here? Didn't you just say whoever's hungry, come and eat? He says, yeah, well, you got to be truthful to your word. Everybody came in and they ate. That's what the Ben Ish Chai writes over here. He used to write a lot of stories. Ben Ish Chai had a flowing pen, a poetic and flowing pen. He wrote many Sfarim. Most of them we don't even have. Most of them are not around. They have some families in Iraq, in England nowadays have some of them. There's just one book that they put out, a couple of writings for him. Hundreds of thousands of dollars they have to pay to get it. Just to ransom it out of the person who didn't want to give it up. It's too bad, So many people are benefiting, every word of the Ben Ish Chai is precious. All right. So, everything's money nowadays. Unbelievable. Even the writings of the Ben Ishchai. What can you do? So, he writes like this: whoever's hungry should come and eat. Whoever needs should eat from, and he should have the Pesach. Now, this language over here, this is the. I'm not even saying like a fancy thing over here. Whoever's hungry, that means because matzah, you eat. You should not eat matzah during the day, like what you mentioned, so that you could be hungry. But the Korban Pesach, the sacrifice of Pesach, which I don't know if we're going to have this year, depends if the Mashiach comes within the next 3 weeks. If it doesn't come, instead of the Korban Pesach, we're going to have matzah. It's called the afikoman. Really, the afikoman is the lamb, is the meat, right? Are you practicing your shechita, Shmuel? Because you're going to be the one who's going to on the line helping us serve the. In case the Mashiach doesn't come, so we're going to have. But the law about eating Korban Pesach is ne'echal ala sova. You're supposed to eat it when you're a little bit full, not when you're totally hungry. Why? Because then it looks like you're not eating it for the mitzvah. Whatever the reason is, you're supposed to eat it ne'echal ala sova. So that's why it says whoever needs to eat it, not that you're hungry, then you should have the Pesach. So in other words, kol dichfin for the matzah, eat it because you're hungry. Kol dichfin, chfin means hungry in Aramaic. Whoever needs to eat the Korban Pesach doesn't say hungry, because you're not supposed to eat it while you're hungry. Hashatacha l'shana haba be'ara de Yisrael, hashatacha l'shana haba be'ara de Yisrael b'nei chorin. We say B'ezrat Hashem should only be this year, but next year already we should be in Eretz Yisrael. Good. That's just an introduction. An introduction to open up our table, and it's the proper way to open up our table, because once we open up our table, that means we show we're really free, and it's really a night of freedom.